Hello?
Brian, can you see me?
Yeah. Can you see me
Yeah,
and hear
let's.
me?
I can hear you good. Let me change my virtual background. Nobody needs to see Neyland Stadium. What's going on, man?
Nothing much, dude. Just been hanging out. Me and the wife have had like a garden going in the back, so we've had that going and just reading and talking to people, man. Really. How about you?
Same, man. I have probably talked to more people in my past life in the last 3 to 4 months than I've probably talked to in years.
Yeah, dude. It's wild. I think with everything going on there, a lot of conversations being had and people just finally digging into some tough topics that uh we wouldn't really dig into before.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of free time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of downtime for people. I know, like, my normal commute's about 45 minutes each way. And so, I mean, you have that 2 hours essentially back into the day, and it's like, well, now what do I do?
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like, I
man.
think I got to a point today. I looked at my wife. I was like, I don't even know. Like, I'm done with video games. Like, I don't even know what to play anymore. Like, I have nothing to do.
Yeah, it's a big difference because I mean, like 2 hours a day. What's that? 10 hours a week. That's basically another work week you get every. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of time, man, and I don't know. People don't know what to do with it. I think a lot of people don't really have hobbies and things like that.
Man, I'll tell you what. I stay pretty busy. I know after this, like, they want us to go back into the office middle of next month, and I'm just like, I don't ever want to go back. Like, all this extra time, like, because I mean, football's coming up, so most of the time it's about 4 days a week. It's 8 a.m. to 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I mean, those extra like 2 hours in there is it's gold.
Yeah, man. Wait, so are you coaching then, or?
I so I coach a youth football team.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we got them last year. We had 8-year-olds, and we had three sign up. And so the head coach went out and started recruiting a bunch of people, and we actually moved up and had two 9U teams. And then this year we brought most of them back, and we got them for 10U, and then Knox County's really weird, and they'll go to a middle school league after this. And so then we'll potentially drop back down to like fives, and then go again.
Oh wow, man. Man, so are you enjoying it? That seems like an age where like they would have fun and they would actually like still kind of listen to you and stuff like that.
Yeah. So our biggest thing was we wanted to just teach the game, and whatever happened, results happened. We knew we were undersized. Like, we had a couple 7-year-olds on our team. Um, we ended up winning a game. A lot of trying times, a lot of handling parents, which I found I don't do a great job of. But um, by the end of the year, I mean, we had parents coming up to us and was like, "Hey, we want our kid to play for you next year. Like, the growth of your team show, because everybody gets to watch like the games all in the same area." And so that was really kind of rewarding, having people come up and be like, "Hey, we like what you did. Like, we know that your team's undersized. We know that they're young. Like, hey, we want our kid to come there." And it's like, well, hey, we did our job then. That showed that people actually, we show that we care. And then this year we have, I want to say, like 7 or 8 new kids, and parents spent about the first 20 minutes just like hawking us. And from there, they're like, okay, you guys are good. And we didn't see them again until the end of practice.
That's cool, man. That's good. So what is it that you don't like about parents? Are they pretty like rowdy at that age even or?
So, like, I have this kind of like mindset, and this ties into um, kind of like the whole topic and discussions of things. Like, I mean, we have good parents. I mean, they bring their kids, but it's like, for instance, the team that just won the state championship, their youth football finished in the top two for like everything. And we got out on the field. Like, I told them, I'm like, hey, this is gonna be a tough game. We're probably going to lose. I'm just being like, I mean, I hate to go in like that, but they were just massive compared to us.
Yeah.
And we get like after the game and the parents are like, well, they cussed at my kid and they did this. And I'm like, your kids cuss. Like, the kid hits you. Why didn't he say something to the ref for hitting back? He's more than what he hits. He hits the other kids on the team all day. Like, what are we supposed to do here?
Right.
And so, I mean, it's kind of like I have this idea in the style of, especially like for that school in particular, they're an inner city school, and it's like, hey, this is their outlet. Like this is this is their getaway time. And toughen your kid up. If they're beating your kid, that's going to make your kid better if they handle that adversity and go on. But you have to let them have adversity, and just two polar different worlds.
Yeah, man. It really is interesting. I think the adversity piece is huge. You have this huge like influx of helicopter parents with these kind of generations that are going on now, and I mean, heck, we kind of experienced it a little bit growing up a little bit, but not quite to the extent that it is now. But if you just look at the evolution of how kids play, even what games they're allowed to play and things like that, it's just it's changed a lot over the years, where you have parents that are even like, I don't know if I want my kid to play football even because it's like too rough. So it's like things are a lot different in that regard.
But and it's hard too, and I it's one thing for older generations. Like I don't hold anything against them because like the people 5-6 years older than me, they evolved with technology at the same rate we did. Like I mean, the kids have tablets. Well, I mean, they've all experienced that in their lifetime. So at the same time, like I get the idea that I mean, I get the idea of like here's an iPad or here's TV, like here's this, but I don't know that it does anybody any good in the long run. Like I got an hour of TV or an hour of video game time if I did my homework.
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and it was like, hey, go outside and play.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, hey, we don't trust outside and we don't want to be bothered or we've got stuff to do. So here's this. Entertain yourself. And I mean, I know like with my daughter, I look at her sometimes, I'm like, how'd you find this? Like, what? And so, I mean, that's scary in itself because you don't know potentially who's on the other side of those screens, and it's tough, man.
And you don't know what their motivation is. Like a lot of people can make content, but anyone can make content on the internet these days if you have a camera, and you know what I mean. So you never know what's out there. And I think you're right, like about the whole like playing outside thing. Like, so I traveled for work a lot. I had to fly all over the country, and I would see these parents, and their kid would start complaining when they were at the airport, and they would just like immediately hand them an iPad, and that like they didn't even like say anything to them. They just like would just hand them an iPad, and then the kid would unlock it, go through, find the proper app, and do everything they need to do to find the wiggles or whatever, and just sit there and just watch it. And I'm just like, whoa, like how can we expect to have any type of relationship if we can't even like work through these issues with our kids, just pacify them with this gadget. And like who's to say that is helpful in their development just because it's a technological advancement? Is that the way people are supposed to progress?
Yeah, and that's I mean, and this kind of is one of those. And this is the video you did with with your fraternity brothers, where they're talking about like the youth that are growing up and like they're determined and like they know what they want and they've got access to all this knowledge. And in some ways, I find it dangerous because they're a part of that first, like they're at the begin, or I guess the end stage. Like they're like where I am when you are on millennials. Like they're in that stage where they grew up with all this stuff. So like, what do they have access to? What did they learn that was from like parents and experience? Or like, there's just so many questions that I have. It's like, how did this happen? Or if they got this information, where'd they get it from? Like, if they don't get their way, are we going to hand them something just to appease it? Like, I sound like the grouchy old man, but it's, it's questions, man.
No, I'm having the same thing, man. It's almost like an existential crisis. I'm just like, what the hell is going on? Who is controlling all of this? Like, so like I'll find something out like about something that happened in history. Like for instance, my buddy sent me a podcast and it was about zombies, and it was like telling the stories of zombies, and come to find out, it had to do with the Haitian Revolution, and zombies were made actually as like a racist symbol, and it just evolved over time. And like me, I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh my God, everything's racist. Like I can't enjoy anything. Like, like what the fuck is going on? And so it's just like my whole notion of like reality just keeps changing. And like the more and more I learn about things, and it's just like not healthy,
Dude, it's so rough. And I mean, to use like a current example, like the Jimmy Kimmel stuff that just happened. Like I grew up watching the Man Show, and I look back at like the Karl Malone stuff, and I'm like, well, I laughed, like, but now do I feel bad for laughing? Like I just
yeah, man.
What like did I do wrong? There's just such a thought now of could I have done better? Like should I have been like, hey, this was bad? And I don't know, man. It's like my childhood's been it just keeps getting pulled back.
It keeps getting pulled back. And I'm having this thing where I'm like, man, like, at a certain point, yeah, you're responsible for your actions, but if we don't allow people redemption, like what does that do to them? And like what does that say about us? And like, how like I don't know. I just think it's such a weird question in society, because you have this like cancel culture now. And like I see kind of two sides of it. So like in one instance, if someone's like not, they're being willfully ignorant and they're just like not learning and stuff like that, it's like, man, maybe I just don't want this type of person in my life. But if it's an instance where the person, is willing to learn, is willing to change and stuff like that, and willing to grow and hear people out, then it's like, don't cancel that person. Maybe let's, allow them the ability to grow. But where do you draw the line? Because, some stuff's like, I don't know if you're, fucking little kids or something. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can like, I don't know.
Well, and that's such a slippery slope because like you see, and I'm only gonna say you see. I want to preface because it's like you see in social media the LBGTQ, and I'm sorry if I miss any letters, but they're like, hey, this, or like the pedophilia comes in, and they're like, well, we're a part of this, and it's like, well, some members are like, no, you're not a part of us, and it's like, well, what do you accept? Like, where like you said, where's that line of, hey, this is wrong, or are we just to govern ourselves and we decide what's wrong?
Like, man, that's I've been having that whole like issue of like, what do I think is the right way that society should run? I think a lot of the problem is, we do have this like identity politics thing going on right now. And like, you're told that you belong to these groups, right? Like, I grow up, I'm Black, I get treated as such, by people who, have these stereotypes in their head. And so I do experience, that as a real thing. But I was talking to, you saw the video with my, my fraternity brothers. All five of us don't even think the same things. You know what I mean? So like, how can you expect all Black people to be the same if, nobody thinks the same? I think everyone's an individual, and like we have these different like tribes that we kind of fall into, where you're kind of like trying to keep, that identity, or that, like, I don't know. It's a weird game that we're all playing.
And I think we're too. I heard it, and I did some like more learning on it. Somebody brought up that like this is the first time in the history of the world that we're not conquering something. Like we're not conquering Russia and saying, hey, we're going to take you over, or like, hey, we're like, what I'm saying? There's nothing like we've been since World War II. We've been forever. Now there's been like wars along the way, but as far as like to conquer a nation or conquer a part of the world and be like, hey, this is ours, we're growing this. Like let's just go attack Canada and take Canada over. Like that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so they were saying like the male brain, we don't know what to do because we're so used to conquering. Like that's what we are like wired to do. And it just doesn't exist anymore. So now we're having to rethink and retrain and like outlet that stuff elsewhere. But we're all just kind of in the same boat of what are we doing?
Yeah, man, and it's tough to have these conversations because one has to acknowledge that there are differences that exist among us. Like there are differences between men and women. There are just biological differences that exist. But it's tough to talk about them because if you make some type of judgment call or any little thing, people will freak out and they'll say that you're sexist or say that you're racist or say that you're some type of ist and like don't allow you to like make the mistake and you're like whoa like look okay like maybe I'm wrong um like help me fix it rather than like call me a name and shun me.
That's kind of like my thought is, and that's why I just was like, when you started this, I was like, hey, this is a great idea, great start. Um, with the Drew Brees incident, I mean, that's kind of like my point of looking at it was he missed the boat, but his teammates coming out just being like, F you, F you. Well, I mean, if you come at me like that, I'm going to swing on you. We're
Right.
done. We've stopped there. But then, like, yeah, Marcus Davenport, it's like, hey, he missed the boat, but let's work with him and let's talk to him. If you come up and say, Scott, I think you're wrong, here's why. Fine, let's talk. But
Yeah.
if it's you're wrong, it's like, whoa.
Right.
But
That's
I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the thing, man. I feel like no matter who you are, if someone pushes against you, you're gonna dig your heels in, whether you're right or wrong. No matter you're just like that's just what it is. Instead of like going over and grabbing the person's hand and saying, "Hey, let me show you what I see in the world," and then it's easy to adjust courses together instead of fighting against each other. But
Right.
I think one dynamic that played in with the whole Drew Brees situation and everything like that is, this, culture of social media where everything is this, report articles are, two paragraphs long anymore because no one cares about what it actually says. It's just, hey, here's what opinion that you should have about this. And then someone else writes the opposite. And it's like, hey, here's the opinion that you should have about this. And then people just like say the same words to each other. Like it's the same parroted lines.
Well, and see, it's like I with the conversation on Twitter, like I got off of Twitter, and the reason why was it. First of all, it encourages instant reactions, which I think society's proven over time. Instant reactions do not get us anywhere because, it's better just to wait and gather the facts. How can we be innocent until proven guilty if we just go with it and we don't know like the backstory? Now, I mean, there's some things like, for instance, the video in Atlanta with the guy that was shot. Like, I can make an instant reaction because I can literally see like what happened and I can process it and make a decision. But like the NASCAR story, I know that gained a bunch of stuff. It was like, boom, blow up. Like, we're going to go for it. It's like, well, let's investigate this. Let's see what happened. I'm sure there's some right, some wrong, but let's see. And then let's make a decision. Like, there's so much of that exists in the world that it almost like it encourages that division because it's so quick. And then nobody wants to be wrong and backtrack and be like, hey, I messed up. It's dig your
Yeah.
heels in and let's go again.
Yeah. And I don't know what that is about people, man. Like, I experience it too. Like being wrong sucks. Losing sucks. You know what I mean? Like it's not fun. But like if we look at it like, okay, maybe I was wrong, but now I have the opportunity to be right. And then you're actually right, and then you can feel confident in that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but people are just like, I don't know, they dig in and then like it just becomes this like game of like, who can say the most clever thing back to the other side.
Which on Facebook that happens, that's, I mean, one of those, well, I got rid of, or I get on Facebook about once every 4 or 5 days, just check up on things. And it like, I mean, it gets nowhere. It's, I grew up, grandma was, don't talk politics and religion. And now you've got like the whole, like this like group of social media on Facebook and Twitter that's all they talk about.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, like you said, you've got the two sides of the aisle and it's like there's nowhere in between. And if you're in between, you must pick somewhere.
It's so ridiculous, dude. It's so ridiculous. And life is not binary. Like it's all shades of gray. But like, another thing about like social media too is back in like the 1920s, I would have maybe like ran into like my neighbor and like the mailman and like, like someone else walking down the street or something. And I would have talked to those three people in that day and got their three opinions. Now it's literally hundreds of people. I'm seeing these, nuanced opinions about things, people from like all over the world, all kind of walks of life. And then I'm just like yelling at them about, no, you're wrong. Like, and it's just like, you're just raging like all day. It's not healthy.
No, man. And it's one of those, like, once you put social media down, it kind of changes like your world. A little bit as far as like, I worked at a bank in inner city Knoxville, and like this was, I mean, there was some stuff going on. I want to say it would have been when the Ferguson stuff went down, and like I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, well, white guy in inner city, like, because you see all this stuff, you see all these people talking, it's like, well, but nobody changed, nothing changed. They were still nice to me. I was nice to them. Went to the restaurants. They knew what I wanted to eat. They knew I was from the bank. Like, it was like, well, I expect. I mean, because it builds in you. Like, you see all these opinions, and it's like, well, everybody doesn't like me.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not true. Once you put that down and you like get into your bubble, everything kind of goes back to normal. But do you want to be in a bubble? I don't know.
I don't know, man. I mean, you can only experience like meetings and like interacting with so many different people in life. Like there's a given number of people that you're going to be exposed to. Like you're not going to see everyone in the world. And I think with
Right.
that, like there's this whole notion of, um, you know, the golden rule, like treat people how you want to be treated. And when you live in your own world, you actually live life instead of like watching it on television and like, letting people tell you what it is. When you actually experience it, you're like, oh, damn, those brown people aren't that mean. Or like, man, those small town people, aren't racist. Or like, damn, and I had such that experience, like, with my wife. She's from Centerville, Indiana. And, the first time I would drive to Centerville, Indiana, I go this way where I go through this town called Abington. And the sign is literally hand painted, right? And like I'm hearing these stories about civil rights era, like my grandpa and stuff, and I'm honestly fucking terrified driving through this little town. Like, oh my god, like I'm gonna get pulled over, something like that, something bad's gonna happen. Man, I've been hanging out with all these people for like 10 years now, and like, and like they're some of the coolest people I've ever met. It's just a different life. It's just that's all it is.
Well, you said, and it's funny, when I moved to Tennessee, like we lived in East Tennessee at first. So like we're about an hour, well, we're about 25 minutes east of Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. And I took this one way to work every day. And I mean, you go up and down, and I always make this joke to my mom and dad. And it's like you would go and it's in the middle of the fields, and you'd have like 3 trailers and it'd all have the Confederate flag. I know, hot button issue right now, but it's like 3 trailers, Confederate flag. And then you'd go like 2 just huge mansion style houses, everything well manicured, perfect, American flag, nothing else. And like you would keep going on, and like again, you get trailer, Confederate flag. And I'm like, why doesn't nobody successful fly this thing? Like, does this correlate success? Like, are we taught, like, is this the baseline that I can show that says, like, what am I missing here? And great people in the area, don't get me wrong, but it's like, it's weird to see. It was a culture shock in some ways, because it's like, well, I never saw that. But the drive to work, I had probably 10 flags I passed
Yeah,
in
man.
between mansions.
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's interesting you say that because I used to work in Greensburg, Indiana, and I would have to drive through St. Paul, Indiana, and it was like this little area where there were like a couple little trailers, a couple small houses, and see these Confederate flags. And I'm just like, oh man, I really hope that like my car doesn't break down in this part of town. Well, my fucking car breaks down in that part of town, dude. Like a year later, after me saying this, like my engine went bad. I had to get my car towed, but old white dude came out. He asked me what was going on. He looked at the under the hood and tried to fix it for me. And he said, "Well, hey, I mean, do you want to just pull into my house and you can wait for the tow truck there and we can just kind of hang out." And I'm like, "Oh shit, this is how it starts, right?" And so like I'm like, man, I'm gonna be in this guy's basement, like like freaking out. And the dude invites me to his house. He makes me tea, or he asked his wife to make me tea, and we sat at his kitchen table and we talked about the classic cars that he restores, and how he's been doing it for years, and how long he's lived there, and how he knows everyone in town and stuff. And it was a cool experience. You know what I mean? But
Well, that's what's tough. Small town USA, like they still are in potentially the 50s, 60s, and just living their life. That's why they live there. They just want to be away from it all.
yeah, man. But the thing that like blows my mind though is like the people that like are actually like racist and stuff like that. Like I just don't get it. I've never like felt like I was better than anyone just because of like some arbitrary thing that like I didn't have any control of. Like
Right.
I don't know.
You know, like you mentioned race, and I think one thing like I thought about, I mean, one thing to share, like, because I know people view these, and I think it's interesting. So, like, I've experienced on both sides of the coin, and I say that, like, one, I don't think it's necessarily considered racism, but it's a hurt of the past per se. Um, so, like, the first time ever, like, really experiencing it, we went through a small town in Pennsylvania. It was Jerron and I. We were coming back from New Jersey, and we stopped at a Wendy's off an exit. And my dad's like, "Hey, a lot of heads are going to turn. They probably don't like you. Just keep your head straight. Both you don't act up. Let's get our food. Let's eat. Nobody's going to do a thing to us." And sure enough, we walked in, and every head in that place turned. It was like jaws on the floor. And we literally uncomfortably we got our food, and we sat there and ate, and we got on our way. And I also, like, I wonder in that case, like, was it just that it was unexpected? Was it like I mean, it was uncomfortable though, because they literally sat there the whole meal watching us what we were doing. And then the second time, and so I never really thought of life this way. And I think this is kind of important because when I first did this, I was like, "Hey, I want to give you the Southern redneck, like, I want to give you like that to bring to the table." And we went to Mississippi for my 21st birthday, and everybody there is super friendly except for the older black people. And I'm like, "What's going on here?" Like, I'm trying to talk to them, just trying to be nice. And we're talking, and my dad goes, "Well, you got to realize, like, this is still sort of uncomfortable for them." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, you're a young punk." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And he goes, because my dad sprays weeds in the South. Like, that's just what he's like. He's done it since he was 18. So, like, everybody, like, he's seen it all. And you got to think he's going to be 60. So you're talking, I mean, he saw, like, into segregation stuff start, like, integrating into everything. And the teaching of it was those people grew up on that. Like, they're still semi uncomfortable to how you're acting right now.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about it in that perspective. But then I talked to my grandma, and my grandma was like, "Well, hey, we used to come down here," and she was like, "I remember segregated water fountains, and I remember segregated bathrooms." And I'm sitting there going, "Well, they didn't teach us that was that near in history class."
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. They make you
and,
think it was like 200 years ago or something, dude.
and so for me, I'm like, well, that guy really doesn't. It's not that he doesn't like me. It's just that he's been mistreated before, probably. And I mean, I wish I could earn his trust, but it probably ain't coming, and that's okay. I think that's the tough thing is we all have experiences, and we all have different experiences, and it's okay to experience that stuff. Like if that guy doesn't like me, whatever, that's cool. Um, but I think it'd be better if we all knew that it was okay to have those experiences. And if you've been hurt, just tell us you've been hurt. Tell us why, so we can have that chance to heal and grow together.
Yeah, man. That's a real thing. You know, people have lived their life, they've had their experiences, and their perceptions are shaped because of their experiences. And so, you have these situations where people grew up, like you said, getting mistreated and things. And so to see, you know, the next generation come along and, they're acting a little different and things like that, it's just weird. It's odd. And it's funny you say that, man, because like, my wife's white, so we'll go places and we've never had anyone openly treat us bad. We've had a couple incidents I could point to where we were walking and people were holding the door and then they looked back and saw us and then just let the door close. Just like stuff like that. It's just like, oh, okay, cool. Um,
Yeah.
but the only one who's actually said something was like, or like did something like kind of like towards me. Was like this older black lady. Me and my wife were in the waiting room, and she's like staring at me, just like giving me this look, and I'm like, looking at her, like, what is she looking at? And then she's like, looking at me, and then she's like, just like shaking her head, like nope, nope. I'm like, and then I'm like, and then she's like, she's like literally like talking to me. I'm just start laughing. I'm like, Jesus, like you're being that way because I am just existing with the person that I love, But
I,
her life experiences might be different, man.
and that's what's tough. And I think it kind of, in a way, it funnels into the political system as well. Is like and I believe that you have to have experiences towards the like age builds wisdom, so you need that in there. But things have evolved so rapidly that where like at what point you sit there and say, okay, well, we need their wisdom, but we might not need their leadership, or we need them to guide us certain places and tell us their experiences, but I don't even think they know what's going on. That world's passed everybody by, and I mean, I'm 31. I feel like the world's passed me by.
Yeah, dude.
So, like what I know, like we talked at the beginning, what we know, do we really know it? It's just
Right. And like if you're a guy that like, say you work on like power lines or something like that and you're out in the field, 10 hours a day, do you like have you really caught up on like all the current events, all the changes in technology? Like I was reading every so often I try to like find a company to invest in that's like, doing some cool thing. And I was like, man, like let me see what this one company's doing. It was a semiconductor company. I read like the description of what they made and stuff. I didn't understand any of the components. I was just like, whoa, this technology is way past my level of expertise. I don't even know what this is. So, like, how can you expect everyone to know the most advanced form of everything? It's like, it's just not realistic.
well, and I think so. I think that one thing. So, like LeBron James and I just said we don't agree on everything. But what I look at him as is the guy, you have to have a level of intelligence to surround yourself with the people that he's surrounded himself with to get him to the point he's got to. Where, I mean, they make, he makes billions. And literally, yeah, he plays basketball, but they and him have put themselves in positions to be set for life. And it's like, yeah, I might not agree with you, but I realize that there's this level of, hey, you know basketball really well, but you put yourself around all these people that know everything else really well, and you all are winning.
Yeah.
And I think that works in friendship. I mean, that works in life. Like I had a football coach this past summer. He coaches at St. Xavier in Cincinnati, and his message was never hire somebody that's dumber than you, because who's going to challenge you and how do you learn? And I was like, it makes a lot of sense. Like you could be power hungry, but surround yourself with the best, and it'll only elevate everybody around you.
Yeah, man. I think that's the way. Uh, what I've found is when I get outside of my bubble, outside of my echo chamber of people who believe the same things I believe and think the same things I think, I have conversations with people and I learn way more because they challenge,
Yeah.
my foundational beliefs, and I'm like, wow. And then they tell me different books to read that I never probably would have read, and different things to watch that I never would have watched. And I mean that kind of brings it back to like the whole cancel culture thing. That's kind of why I don't like it completely as an idea, because it's like, if you go around canceling everybody who isn't like you, then you get around a bunch of people who are like you, and it's just a bunch of yes men, and you just like life just gets boring, right?
Well, and I think that's what's scary, and this will tie into the TJ conversations. I think that's what's scary about the cancel culture is it almost feels like we're heading towards a level of communism, socialism, that everybody's the same, because in reality, that's what that world is. They people pick what you get to do, and I mean, it looks good. We're taught it looks good, but investigating it, it's like we're all the same. Individual free thought goes completely away, and I don't. That's what's tough is, do we cancel ourselves to a point where we're no longer a scope of individuals?
Right, right. I think it's dangerous to do that, where you cancel ideas and things like that, because then you don't get that growth. You don't get that hybridization of ideas that creates new ideas. And granted, there are some ways of thinking that like probably shouldn't be a thing. Like I would like to see them like eliminated from the world. Like I don't know, like discrimination in general. Like I don't understand why people would discriminate against someone. That's not to say that in
Right.
your mind you can't be like, oh man, I fucking hate them, but just like don't treat them like shit. Just treat them with respect and move on if you don't like them, and go hang out with the people that you do like. You know, like I don't
Well,
know.
and that's the thing is, it almost feels like we have to like everybody, and the reality of it is I'm not going to like everybody. No, I'll sit down and have a beer with you, and we'll go on our way at the end of the day. And I, I think that's the thing is I wish we could all do is we don't have to agree, but maybe there's something out there where we do agree on, and we can connect in that common ground and move on from there. Like, hey, we don't have to vote the same. We don't have to think the same. But maybe we like the Volunteers, or maybe we like the Buckeyes, or maybe there's something there that on Saturday we can go hang out, we enjoy our time together, and then we go back home.
And that's what you did when you were a little kid, dude. It's like,
Exactly.
I would go over to my one friend's house to play like WWF wrestling, and then I'd go to my other friend's house to like build a fort, and then that's what you do when you're a kid. You just like take life as it comes, and your friends are different, and it's like, oh yeah, that's my one friend. He eats his boogers, but he's cool. Like we play games, like you know what I mean. Like I'm not pro booger eating, but
Yeah, I mean, you found common goals, and I mean, I know as you grow up, things change, and your friends change, and but like I mean, I can say it. The head coach of my football team, me and him are probably totally politically different, but man, we don't talk about it one bit. We show up, we talk football, we talk life, we talk kids, but he doesn't like talking about it. I could care less to talk about it at certain times. So hey, if that's where our common ground is, that's where we meet in the middle. Let's make a relationship out of it. And let's have some fun.
let's have
I
some
wish we
fun,
were
man.
all like that.
Yeah. Actually, if people treated life more like a sports team, You know, I think there would be, because I mean, shit, you have people of all different colors, all different places, and stuff like that, and you're fighting for one common goal. It's like, hey, let's just like let's like actually make America great if that's what we're gonna do. You know, like if that's what the thing is, let's fucking do it. Like I can get behind that if we're actually gonna do it. So
Well, but
yeah,
you say that, and I think this will this may take this like to one side of political. Um, we say that make America great again, and we use the slogan Black Lives Matter, and then the counter protest of the All Lives Matter and the Blue Lives. Like, are we only using catchy marketing slogans because we live in a world where 140 characters gets you through, and you're living on headlines? Are we just headline marketers? Is that all we are at this point? And we
yeah.
pick a side and we go.
I think that's kind of what it is. It's what it's devolving into. It seems like people just they're easy to digest, and so people latch on to those little sayings and things like that, and I don't know, they just like stick with it. I think life is actually much more complicated than just 140 characters. Like you got to talk this stuff out and get to the bottom of it. And it's like,
Right. Like, oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's interesting because, like, I've talked to some people that are like, I'm having a hard time because I don't, agree with what Black Lives Matter, the organization, stands for, but I agree with the statement that Black Lives Matter. So, like, they're like, I don't know how to like navigate that. It's a weird, like, double think, sort of situation.
Yeah, and that to me is, I mean, that's how I feel about it. Is I think there's a cause there; it's worthy, but is what's backing that up? Is it effective? Is it the message we want? And I think on the flip side of that, the "Make America Great," yeah, that sounds great. I mean, if you look at the world numbers, like TJ put world numbers out there about the cultures and what we look like, but like our education is no longer as good, our health is no longer as good. Like all these countries have passed us by, and we can say "Make America Great Again," but I mean, in 4 years with no plan, are you going to make America great again? I don't think so. I
Yeah,
mean,
man.
it's a collective team effort that starts locally. And I think that's what's scary is I see people talking about voter registration and we're going to get out and vote. And it's like, well, if you would have voted in the last 10 years for your local legislation, things would be different. Like in Knox County, we have so do you remember Kane from the WWE?
Oh yeah, yeah, yep.
So he's our mayor.
What? That's
And,
wild.
and the first time he ran Libertarian and got like 2% of the vote. The next time he ran as a Republican and won. And still libertarian, same policies, but did that. Well, so we have a county in the city, and Knox City is a Democrat mayor. And we get along great. Like both sides of the aisle get along great. We policies in place, like the whole COVID stuff. Like they didn't agree on certain things, but they still managed it well together. And it's like if everywhere across the country would have voted for people on the local levels, would we have ever have been in this situation that we're in heading into November? And or would it even matter because our local levels are so strong that even if we take it to a state level and we're like, oh, hey, we're just going to vote party lines, like even then your local levels are so strong that they combat against that and they're in the interest of the people.
Yeah, man. I think there's something to that. Like, I think if people got more involved locally, or even like ran for things locally, they could make a difference and really experience that difference. There's a saying I like that I came across recently that says, "If everyone swept their front porch, the world would be clean." And it's kind of like the whole Jordan Peterson notion of wake up and make your bed first, make your own bed
Yeah.
first. You know?
Yeah. And I think I don't know where we lost that. I think it's probably education because we grew up. It was vote for the president. Like every 4 years, we'd get that big like push on TV and rock the vote and this and that. And to me, it's like at the local level, that represents your people, and you're more likely to, let's say, get a Democrat that has Republican beliefs and a Republican that has Democrat beliefs, and you're able to mingle. Whereas as you go up the chain, they just vote.
Yeah, yeah, it's absurd, and they don't even really like people don't even like take the time to understand what they're voting for. They just like play to their team, just like straight
Yeah.
ticket. I'm just like, whoa, it's a weird game, and I wish people actually ran on policies rather than party, because then I feel like people would start to evaluate like, hey, what this person's saying is something that I actually want to see in the world. Not, oh nope, he's on my team, but even if he's gonna do shit that I don't like, I'm still gonna go for him because he's on my team.
Right. Well, and that's like, so when all this was going down, in there's a guy named Thomas Massey. If you look him up, he's a Republican Congress member in Northern Kentucky, and like he votes no on everything. And when the Corona stuff, when they were going to pass the stimulus bill, he was trying to hold it up. And like Trump goes on Twitter and he's like, this guy doesn't support the Second Amendment. He's no good. And the dude owns 3 gun shops. And he's literally on your team. The only difference is he's challenging this thought because he doesn't believe in it. And you're going to go with, he doesn't believe in the Second Amendment.
What is that, dude? Like, what is that? What does that help? It just like tries to like freak people out. It's this, I don't know, man. I guess that's what you get when you have a reality TV star as your president.
Well, and it's tough too. So like, I love our representative for Knox County. His name's Tim Burchett. The guy, when I was on Twitter, like every day when sessions were in, he'd post videos about what they voted for, how they voted, what his thoughts were on the vote. I know there was one day it was like 600 million or 600,000 or 600 million to salmon research. And he was like, why are we spending money on this? But I love the transparency that he gave. And even if we don't necessarily agree, it's like, hey, there's the transparency. And then the Corona stuff happens. And very openly, he goes, hey, I don't agree with this, but we got to put money in Americans' hands. Okay. I don't know that I agree as far as that we just said here, go without like further researching, but I at least respect the fact that he was like, hey, I'm looking out for you first. I don't know that I agree with it, but we got to do something, and this is what we're doing. So it's accepting a loss with the understanding that you're going to at least get some temporary help. I don't know that there's a better way to take that.
Right. And I mean, we all have to make concessions. I think that's the thing that people like fail to realize these days is like, even with your family, like, it's like, oh man, like I kind of wanted to eat Mexican tonight, but everyone else wants Italian. So I guess it's Italian tonight and Mexican, like next time or something. So you make these concessions and life goes on. Like,
see, and that's kind of like my thought. And I know like they've talked about like, or people, or TJ especially talked about like political beliefs. And on the last one, your fraternity brothers were like, well, hey, I wish there was a conversation of somebody that believed one way but said another. And I think there's several hot button issues where it's like, hey, if you feel this way, like you have to vote this way. And so like, I mean, I'll just say it, like, so abortion, I don't believe in it. But reality of it is I'm not a woman. I don't get to make that choice. So why are we voting on it? Why is this in legislation? Like,
yeah.
But if you ask me if I believe in it, the answer is no. But I'm also not going to tell somebody else no. And I have those kind of feelings where it's like, hey, if you ask me and you're going to make me vote, yeah, I'm going to vote one way because you're making me. But if we provide some context in it, do I agree with it? No. Like we shouldn't go that way. Like let them choose. Like let people choose. But I think back to the point of the binary choosings is like you pick one representative and you get like this set of issues, and you pick this representative and you get this set of issues. It's like I don't want to vote for either of you because I don't want this or this.
Right. Yeah, it's much more nuanced, man. It's much more nuanced. And And I'm with you. Like, I'm not a woman, so I don't feel that my opinion on abortion should really even matter. Like, like for
It's
me, it's like it doesn't even matter what I think because I'm never going to have one. So why should I have a say? So like, you know what I mean?
right. Well, and that's like the hot button issue. I mean, gay marriage. Let's just jump into it. For me, like I remember back when insurance was a deal. I know there's Chuck and Larry out there. That's the fun movie that everybody laughs at. But I mean, there was the reality of the whole like insurance benefits of two men or two women or whatever, however you want to work it. And to me, it's like, well, why was this ever a deal? Like, why did the federal government have to step in? Like, couldn't we have just had common sense, went out and like everybody gets one person to join an insurance and kids to join and we're cool. Like, why did we try to stop these things? Now it's like, do I totally agree? No, but do I like, am I going to force my opinion or do I think you're entitled to any less rights than me? No. So go do it and have fun.
Right. And I think that goes back to
Yes.
kind of like what we were saying earlier, where it's like you can have a different opinion, but as long as you're not like discriminating against someone's lifestyle, if you're allowing them the same freedom that you want, like I don't give a shit personally what anyone does in their bedroom. You know what I mean? You could do whatever you want to do in your bedroom with whoever you want to do it with. It's none of my business. You know? And you can
Well,
love
I
who
mean,
you want to love. Like that's for me, it doesn't matter because I don't love them. You know, it's yeah.
right. And I, I'll tell you too, like Black Lives Matter, when it first like 2015, 2016, I'm sitting there going, I don't know that I agree with this. And then people were marching. I don't know, like I asked him, I'm like, hey, why are you marching? And like he very eloquently broke down. He was like, well, they disproportioned houses and they tore down affordable housing and they spread us out into houses that we can no longer afford with no opportunity. And I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. And he's like running down the school systems and the budgets and how underfunded they are. And I'm like, I can get behind that. Like, okay, let's march. like, like, like I didn't agree necessarily at the time with the premise, but the sub causes underneath, it's like, okay, that makes sense. Let's go. And I wish though, like in some ways we could make that a reality. And I think these conversations are good is that, I mean, I'm open to ideas. It's like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. But at the end of the day, like, hey, I don't have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with me. Let's just have some fun.
Let's just have some fun,
It's
man. I saw there was another quote that I liked. I listened to a podcast, and it was the folks who are offering objections were not noting the objection and then turning to face the world with us, but rather presenting the objection and then crossing their arms. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing. Instead of being like, hey, man, you know, when you tell me that on the surface, I don't think that sounds like a good idea. Could you like explain it more and like let's work through it? Like I wish people would do that instead of just being like, nope, nope, nope.
right.
You know?
We would get so much further critically thinking that way because once you cross the arms, it's done from
Yeah,
both sides.
it really is,
Um,
man.
I mean, hey, it's like when you crossed your arms and said no headbands way back when.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Still frustrated at you for that. For people that don't know the
Yeah, yeah.
headbands, uh, class project, we sell goods, and we ended up making some like stupid jewelry.
Yeah, man. It was it like Worthington Jewelers or something like that? With
Dude,
what was the
I
guy's
think
name?
Joe Davis,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think he had criminal charges pressed against him.
I think he got in some trouble too, man. I don't want to like, slander anybody, but I'm pretty sure he got in some trouble.
Now I think he got out of it, or something happened, but that hey, but there's a perfect example. I mean, we were kids, we worked together, nothing changed. Like I mean, we compromised throughout the whole ordeal, and we went with it.
And we went with it, man. And hell, and years later, we're still having fun on the internet with each other right now, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, I think it was like when all this stuff came down. Um, I realized that Chris Phillips lives over in like Raleigh, and I'm sitting there going, shoot, that's just over the mountain. That's like a 4 hour drive. Let's go. Like, I think that's one thing that the Corona stuff was just kind of, um, it was eye-opening. And then I guess from the flip side of it, the Black Lives Matter stuff, this movement with everything going on, I mean, I reached out and was like, hey, what can I, or tell me what you're thinking. Like, let me know how you feel. And you build the conversation. It's like, well, hey, you live close. I mean, we used to hang out all the time. Why are we hanging out still?
Right. Let's kick it, man. Yeah.
um, but no, I think that's the weird thing with all this. I think conspiracy theory. So I know you've talked about some. So I think like my conspiracy theory is all of this started as a way to divide us, and we were starting to come together, and then we have another division, and we all started to come together again. So it's like we have another division. Now we have the rioting and stuff. And we see that imagery and we're like, oh, bad people. But we're not understanding the context of the bad people. But again, division. So now we're starting to come back together and things are getting peaceful again. We're all back like, hey, we believe in this. And now we're back to Corona again. It's like, how do we keep dividing these people that keep coming together? It's like we've all like these talks are happening all over, and it's like every time we start to come together, division. Start to come together, division. Like,
Man, I used to think that the whole like communist infiltration and the psyops, stuff, being run on us like to try to divide us was just like a crazy fringe right-wing talking point. I was like, oh no, that's just like some stuff. But the more and more like I really like, think about it and see these videos and understand what psyops are and stuff, I'm like, someone's running something on us. I don't know if it's the Russians or whoever, but I have to think that if you watch the news cycle and you see what's trending and you see the types of stories that are constantly put on and stuff like that, none of them are like feel good stories. And why is that? There's so much good happening in this United States and in this world, but like everything is just like little kid gets blown up by nuclear bomb, like something crazy, like all the
well, and
time.
that's the thing that bothered me with the protest stuff that just happened and is still ongoing is that like you saw the bad imagery of it, but then there's like people that are actively like, hey, they're putting bricks out here. Hey, like, why are they putting all these rocks and stuff? Like, these weren't here yesterday. And I guess that goes back to the whole thing of where social media can be a good thing because we get that information. I guess the question then is how do you digest that information and filter that information between like total hoax or totally real? Like I think with stuff like that, because we don't have a trusted news cycle, I think we have an advantage because we grew up with Google's not a source. I
Yeah.
mean, even in college, you had to go to the library, you had to go get a book out, and you had to cite your book source and hope that your professor wasn't going to go to the library and try to find your book. And I'm curious at how many people don't like look deeper into that stuff because I think that's where my conspiracy theory stuff started is like you look at the stock market, for instance, and the it was like 30 or it was people with incomes of 30,000 to 70,000. There was like an 80% uptick in people that invested their stimulus money into the market. And Warren Buffett went and dropped everything. And then we propped everything back up. It was like this one guy who's controlled the market almost single-handedly. A group of us got together and overinflated the market. And it's like, well, was he mad at us? Like, did he just pull some strings and like, hey, we're going to pull these people out of our market? And I just, do you have enough money and power to do it? Why not? Like, there's so many questions. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah. It's so many questions, dude. It's so many questions. And like, I don't know, man, you hear about all these guys who do have this power and influence. I mean, if you look at like Amazon as a corporation and you understand what they're invested in, what types of technologies and like, how many subsidiaries they actually have, how much cash they're actually sitting on, you soon realize that like, oh man, maybe Standard Oil wasn't the biggest monopoly. Maybe it's fucking Amazon.
Uh,
Like,
well, and then I know again you guys talked about taxes last time, and then you go and you see that like for 3 years they never recorded a profit. Wait, what? Like you know that they've got all this money. You know that they like how good of accountants do you have that you can rig the books to show no profit?
I don't understand it, man. I mean, hell, the Panama Papers came out, and it was like, hey, every rich person it basically is, hiding their money in tax shelters in like the Cook Islands and Bermuda, and not paying any taxes. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay, like business as usual.
Well, and that's what's crazy is like I mean, I'm in banking, so I see people's returns, and I'll tell you, like this is the one thing that when he ran, everybody was like, "Oh, I want to see Trump's tax returns," and I'm like, I don't, because I guarantee you, I don't understand what they're going to say, and the reasoning is like, I look at people's returns, and it's like they might make $400,000 or $500,000, and they write all of it off, and yeah, they can't get loans necessarily because they have no income to prove, but you know that they're making all of that. They're just all writing it off and living tax free. Living as with as minimal tax as possible.
That is wild, dude. And it's crazy because I don't think I had one class in all of my years of school that told me anything about how to play the tax system. You know what I mean?
Dude, that's the thing. And I will say we were truly blessed. Worthington, I look at all these stories and I'm like, and I hear like people saying that they started behind the eight ball, like that, like when they talk about white privilege, they're like, well, you guys started ahead of us. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, in Worthington, we started off even. Everybody was even. But then I look around and I'm like, man, you know what? Like, we had a media class, we had a journalism class, we had business classes, we had a stock class. Like, we had all this extra stuff that we probably took for granted. That it's like, how would we even implement that stuff into other schools that don't have those capabilities? And would we be better off for it? I would say yes, but how do you implement it?
I think it goes back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, man, with people doing it within their local communities. I think if communities were more organized and people got back to where they, knew who their neighbor was and stuff like that, and they actually had a stake in, the school district and things like that and what they were doing, maybe you'd be able to, find some alignment in some of that. I think you run into a problem when you try to do something for the nation. It's a lot.
Thanks a lot. No child left behind. But no, and I think too. So like in the South, vocational schools are still a big deal, and this is something I'm doing more research in because it's something I think that would be beneficial. Is you teach people a trade, like you teach them to be plumbers, or you teach like haircut or beautician school, like you teach this. And I mean, let's just say on the idea of like a air conditioning repair person, let's say they knock down 60,000, 70,000 within the first few years out of school. Nobody's ever taught them how to handle money. So like, should vocational schools have a finance class in it that just like, here's how you handle money, and just it's a curriculum requirement to graduates. That would do, I mean, how many people would that benefit? It's just a small implementation across the board. I don't know cost wise what that would look like. I'm sure you could probably get that through and be pretty decent. But it's like if you had that one small change, it would level the playing field for that whole group of people, and everybody else would be started off. And honestly, they'd probably be started off better than those that go to college, because not only do they have at least a financial base, they also have a trade to go out and earn money on.
Right. Like I think it gives everyone at least the tools to better their situation, no matter what their situation is, if you equip them with that knowledge. The same could be true, same could be said for, sports. So you have a kid that's, 19 years old, 20 years old in college, and then he goes to the draft, and then all of a sudden he gets millions of dollars, and no one ever taught him, you know, like how to manage that. And then you
Yep.
wonder why he's bankrupt, like, you know, a couple of years later. Because wealth isn't about how much money you have. It's about how you manage your cash, you know, cash flow.
Right.
So if you teach people how to manage their cash flow and, you know, understand like taxes and things like that, I think everyone's life would improve.
Well, you know, so this is a story. I won't say necessarily who, just because I am friends with him. So if they were to see it, won't share necessarily the full story of it. But they were in the NFL. They were a 7th-round pick in New York. When they were done paying their rent, their agent fee, the New York taxes, and general living expenses, they came out at $0 for the year. like you think like you made it big time. Now eventually he did sign a bigger contract, but like literally for 2 years he played for nothing when it was all said and done.
There's no difference between him and a poor man. You know what I mean? If you have nothing to show for yourself, like, okay, oh yeah, he has a roof over his head, stuff like that. Okay, like, you know, there's that. But in terms of like his ability to do anything, $0? Zero?
Yeah. And that's what he said, that he thought he was living the dream, but then when the accountant like brought everything back to him, nothing.
Yeah.
And we see that person and we're like, that person probably makes great money. And we never have an idea that, I mean, they made less when everything was said and done than probably you or I do.
Yeah, man. A lot of people are living in houses of cards where, yeah, they make $200,000 a year, but they actually spend $210,000, slamming $10,000 on a credit card, you know, every year. And yeah, and it looks like their big house and stuff is cool, but they're not doing anything except going to work to pay for their big house, just to go to work to pay for their big house. You know,
we should look to see about starting or implementing an online financial literacy that kids can take through school, like that doesn't take up a class, or like something that they can get a credit for going through online. They'd still have to pass the test and everything, but just give them a general base knowledge. I mean, I'm sure you could implement it across the board with kids' tablets. Please don't steal this, anybody. Like, but
I mean, like, let them try. Let them try. We'll implement it. You know.
I mean, it's crazy though to think about that.
I mean, I would be down, man. I actually think that's a great idea, and I think it would have been, you know, very helpful for me, because the things I learned along the way, I had to learn the hard way for most of them. Like I was the guy, you know, when I bought our first house, me and Kelsey were like, oh my God, we can afford this big house. Let's buy this big house. And then we were like, oh damn, like, guess we're not going on too many vacations. You know what I mean? And so now I live in a very modest house. My house is 1,200 square feet, and my cash flow is much better. You know?
Yeah, that's what's tough is in, like, for instance, cars. Like, people have 7-year loans now and 10-year loans, and it's like that car is not worth anything to you or them when it's done, except for they made a lot of interest off of you.
They made a lot of money off of you.
And it's like we're affordable, and maybe, you know, it goes back to, we have to keep up with the Jones. I mean, everything we were infiltrated with on TV was status, and you question how much does status play in the role of what we're dealing with overall in society right now, because it's we're in a constantly, and I don't know it's constantly to get better. It's just we are in a constant to get more possessions, and I don't know that it's necessarily the best way to attack life, honestly.
It's not. It really is. I mean, at least for me, I found that when I have a possession that I've wanted for some time, the brightness, or like the appeal of it wears off very quickly. You know, like, you buy a new car and it smells good for like a month, and then that first payment comes and you're like, damn. And then, you know, you get that first oil change, and then you get that first like noise coming from it, and you're like, oh man, yeah, it's not,
Right.
Things aren't all that they're cracked up to be. And I think we're, as a people, putting our resources into the wrong things, trying to keep up with the Joneses and look cool and have flashy stuff, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the weird thing is that like when I would I remember like my mom's boss went to Southwestern schools and she'd be like, "Oh, you went to the rich school." I'm like, "I'm not rich. Like I don't have nothing." But how much of that, like we have that perception for all of our schools and all of our areas, and it's like, what if we just drop that? What if we just cut perception? Because how many people just lived on credit that were just trying to keep up that really didn't have money? Or how many people had a bunch of money that lived down and never showed it? Like, how much does perception play in our life that if we just cut the, like, if we quit looking at the cover and just said, hey, we're going to jump right into the book, how much would that change things?
I think that's the next step in society, man. I think that's just like a sign of maturity as like a species. Because I think you think about like biologically, we did have to make like snap judgments. Like, is this thing gonna kill me or is it not gonna kill me? And so that has to like kind of like factor in, I guess. Um, kind of over time genetically. But I think we're at a point where we have the capacity as human beings to sit back and say, hey, okay, let me truly evaluate this thing rather than looking at it and going, oh nope, he's that color, I don't like him. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't know anything
Right.
about the guy, but oh nope, that's what he looks like. Oh nope, she's a girl. Nope, not gonna hire her. Like that's so like I just don't understand that type of thinking.
Right. And I think that I think it's tough. I think we almost honestly, I think we set ourselves back. I think that in well, because like we grew up in the '90s, and you were hearing about women's rights still and unequal pay, and still fighting for that today in many cases. Um, I know, for instance, I've seen it in the workplace where a person has family, they might not get promotion or something might happen, and they're no longer available to do things, and it's tough. I mean, because like as a male, you're thinking that when that person comes into the room, it's like, well, hey, they might be out. But you can't think like that because really all you're doing is judging everybody on a base of talent of are you better than this person? And it's almost like what level of self-awareness are you in making that decision? And then how do you evaluate, like if you're above them, how do you evaluate down to sit there and say, are they evaluating truly the best talent? Or are they saying, just like you said, oh, skin color can't hire, oh, woman can't hire? Like, I think that's good. That, like you said, that's the next step, like figuring out how we evolved into that. But I don't know that there's a great answer.
I don't know that there is either. Um, Me and my wife were talking, and we were like, man, it's almost like you need to have like a syllabus, like as a human being. Like, here are the basic things that you need to know to be a human and be a productive member of society. And then once you cross these things off, you are now like, you're now caught up.
Yeah, so much of I don't know.
So
Just,
much I don't knows, man. Um,
it's tough.
it is. But hey, man, I actually have another call here at 7:30, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon because I want to give myself a break beforehand. But we should definitely consider that financial literacy thing because I think that's something that we could do that you know would be enjoyable and would also be very impactful and help some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's follow up on that. If anybody, I mean, if anybody wants to join that, I'd love to talk more. Anytime. I thought this was valuable. I got stories for days. I can talk for days. So I'm a salesman at the end of the day. So anytime, yeah, I'm more than happy to. But let's follow up on that, and then let's make a difference in the world, and let's just have some fun.
Let's have some fun, man. I'd like to get you on here and chat again with you. It was great catching up with you and getting to see you.
Hey, absolutely, Ryan. You have a good night. I'm gonna go give a 3-year-old a bath here.
Hey, have fun, man. Enjoy. Much love to you and the family.
Hey, talk to you later, man.
See ya.
Bye.